Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Today's Road to Retail episode is powered by Market Performance Group, MPG, a leading omnichannel commerce agency delivering integrated commercial solutions that accelerate profitable growth. MPG's new growth initiative helps brands of any size win in every channel, whether launching DTC, scaling on Amazon, or entering brick and mortar. Its team, veterans from top retailers, CPGs, and digital platforms, connects brands with consumers across the full funnel, delivering right-sized strategies, strategic go-to-market plans, advanced analytics, and deep retailer relationships for exceptional business results. Check them out at marketperformancegroup.com.
2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of The Road to Retail. We appreciate your time joining us here today. Tracy Priest, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, my friend Bruce? Good to see you.
I'm good. It's always good to meet with our folks and get back out there and talk about the road to retail.
Absolutely. So tell our audience today what it's just going to be you and I today. So what are we going to talk about?
Well, it's line review season. So those of you that actually have products in with a retailer right now, this time of year is when you kind of get together and see how the year went, actuals versus plans. So we're going to go through what you want to do in order to prepare for your line review. So we're going to jump off with a couple of quick definitions, and Tracy's going to do that. So Tracy, tell us what a line review actually is before we start going deep.
Absolutely. So a line review is when you have current distribution. And as we say on our show a lot, it's when the buyer's going to grade your paper. You're going to talk with your buyer about how the year went, how it's going, what are the, areas of improvement if there are some. So it's really just a dialogue with your buyer about how things are going and how you're contributing to his category growth, because as we'll talk about later, that's what the buyer mostly talks about, is really concerned about. The second part of the question is can be called a category review. And a lot of times that is used by a retailer or a buyer when you don't have distribution. And so you are presenting your new items to get in for, usually if it's now, for quarter 1 or quarter 2 distribution in 2026. So that's the difference. We'll interchange today between line review and category review. So just know that depending on if you have distribution or not, it can be interchanged. Bruce, did I miss anything there?
No. I think that's really good. Another thing that can happen at this time, some accounts will call this, if you're not in distribution, you'll get something referred to as a call for new items, or I'm taking new item meetings right now. So there's a couple of ways to look at this. But Tracy, I think that definition of category review and line review was really helpful. So thank you.
Awesome. So talk to us a little bit about our potential outcomes of our meeting.
Okay, so as Tracy said, we're going to operate largely under the premise that you have some items in a retailer. So we're talking about how the year went. So the potential outcomes of your line review could be a discussion around expanding distribution, whether that means more stores or more SKUs. It could be a discussion around a reduction in distribution, fewer stores, fewer SKUs. All comes down to performance, which we'll talk about in a bit, but we talk about it all the time. So this is not new news. And if things are really dark, it could be a discussion about discontinuation. And Tracy will be putting on his Grim Reaper outfit when we discuss that in detail. The other thing that you would talk about at this time is you'll review the promotional performance and your spend. Now, this is really good, especially if you've paid really close attention, because trade spending is just part of the cost of doing business in whether it's a digital environment or a brick and mortar environment. So when you run promotions, it is imperative that you know what your baseline is, you know what you spent, and you know what sort of incremental performance that each of these promotions ran. Because to say you're not going to spend trade dollars is folly. That's not going to happen. But if you show up with facts that, hey, this promotion didn't really work well, so we're not going to do that again, that's very fair. And it shows you were paying attention. But you need to come back and say, but let's try this, and come forward with, if we extended it one more week, we would have had a positive ROI. If we could waive a portion of the setup fees, if you would take a tiny bit of margin compression, there's ways to have that discussion. Another thing that will come up, and that sets the table for what you will and won't do ideally the next year. Another part that'll come up right now is you'll be asked, how's the category doing? So whether you're in skincare, cookies, cough, cold, you name it, you got to show that you're on top of the category trends. And that's more than it was up or it was down. Which piece of these complex categories was up or down? Was it, let's stay with cough, cold. Was it cough, cold tablets? Was it cough, cold liquids? Was it a soft cough, cold season? Show that you've put the time in to understand the dynamics of what was going on. Tracy, what else are in the potential outcomes here?
Yeah, so you definitely want to talk, if necessary, about your pricing. So how is your price compared to your competitor and in the total category? So at this point, maybe there's a discussion needed to be had with the buyer about adjusting your price up or down, but it's also going to be based on what the category margin requirements are that the buyer is looking for. The biggest thing you'll want to discuss at this time, if there's going to be a price increase. We hear a lot these days about tariffs and things like that, and how cost of goods are going up. So if that's a discussion, if that's something that you're planning on doing in 2026, now is the time to have that discussion. And at that time, if you are going to have that discussion, the buyer is going to want you to substantiate why you're taking a price increase. You can't just say, oh, we're taking our price up. And you can't just say, oh, that's because our cost of goods went up or because of tariffs. They're really going to want a very detailed explanation of why you are taking your price up. Now, price is going up in a lot of areas, so they probably won't be shocked. Also know that many retailers will require you to protect the current inventory, and also probably will require you to have some kind of 90-day announcement and a very detailed explanation of why you are taking your price up. You can't just say, very simple. They really want a detailed explanation, and they may want a copy of your P&L showing all of the breakout of the costs. And again, it may be because of your shipping costs are going up, but you definitely need to make sure that you have a detailed explanation of why you're taking a price increase. And then, Bruce, overall, you really just in this meeting want to make sure that you are explaining in great detail to the buyer, did I do what I say I was going to do in 2025? So if that meant last year you said, I'm going to do 20 weeks of promotion, you better make sure you're showing that you did 20 weeks of promotion. If you said you were going to be a part, of, their digital marketing campaign, you want to show that you did that. And again, in great detail. Bruce, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's really good. One other quick point on price increases. If you are going to take a price increase and you go through all the steps Tracy said and it gets quote unquote accepted, just be careful that your retailer will expect a little bit of a window where they will forward buy. So you and your team need to do things such as, know what their average orders are weekly or monthly and let them buy 2 or 3 weeks at the old price, but don't let them go buy 8 months at the old price because, bad things can happen. First off, you don't start realizing the benefit of your price increase and you've gone through all that pain. In certain accounts, whether we admit it or not, if the price increase is juicy enough, you've now given them an incentive to potentially create another market for your goods where people can buy them cheaper than from you. So, Tracy, this is an important meeting for every brand, whether you're a gigantic brand or an emerging brand. What's your counsel on how to prepare for this meeting?
All right. One of the things that comes to mind, and we've talked about this, Bruce, also in previous episodes, and also came up when we were interviewing buyers and top retailers, is tell me something I don't know. So you need to come across to the buyer that you're the category, as Bruce was explaining earlier, you're the category expert. How's the category doing? How is my brand doing versus the market? The buyer's definitely going to want to know that. And then are you growing the category? Remember, that's what the buyer mostly cares about. Are you contributing both margin and units to his category? That's what he wants to know. And you need to make sure that that's one of the things that you are really sharing, and also making sure that you understand that this buyer is taking a huge risk, especially if you're a small emerging brand, which is what our audience is today. They're taking a risk on you, and you need to make sure that you're delivering on that. So come in and be the expert, not only on your brand, but on the category, on the marketplace, so that you are telling the buyer something that he was not aware of. Of course, a buyer has access to a lot of data, but sometimes they don't have time to look at it. And maybe before the meeting, the buyer didn't get a chance to look at how your brand was doing in his data source. And so you want to make sure that you come across as the expert.
Yeah, Tracy's points are really good. So just to add a few more, especially when it comes to data, if you have any bad news on your brand, bring it up right away. Don't hope they won't find it. Don't hope they don't notice. Most of the big retailers, whether you're a digital storefront or an omni-channel or brick and mortar, they have a lot of people looking at data all the time. The odds of them missing something are basically non-existent. And as Tracy said, without being a drama queen, taking on a small emerging challenger brand rather than the latest line extension from God's massive company is a risk. And if you're having trouble shipping, or there's damages, or you're not fulfilling your obligations from a promo calendar standpoint, this could get tough. So if you have a problem going on, acknowledge it right away, explain what the problem is so that they have confidence you actually know what was wrong. Talk about why it happened, when it'll be fixed, and what steps you're taking to make sure that does not happen again. And bring this right up right away. Remember, a retailer can easily live without you as a small emerging challenger brand because you're not big enough yet to really move the needle in their category. So being honest and taking these issues on head on up front before you talk about what you want to do for expansion. Talk about getting your act together with the stuff that's already there. It builds a ton of credibility if they don't have to be the ones to say, hey, Bruce, let's talk about this problem first. Bring it up yourself. Mm-hmm. Tracy, when you're putting together the content of a line review deck, what should be in there? Both content, length, duration, how long are these meetings usually? What do you got?
So usually you're going to only get 30 minutes. So make sure that you're have kind of an upfront outline. Here, Mr. Buyer, this is what we're going to talk about today. Again, Bruce and I talk about this a lot in our episodes. Keep it short. Don't come in with a 30-page deck. 10 to 15 pages is all that you really need. Keep it short and to the point, and make sure that it's a dialogue. A lot of times, if you're nervous, you'll get in there and you'll just jump right in and keep talking without asking questions or having a dialogue with the buyer. Again, keep it short, direct, have an outline. Here's what we're going to talk about. And another thing Bruce brings up a lot is when you get into the meeting, ask the buyer, are you running on time? Do we still have the 30 minutes that you gave me? Especially when you're talking, a lot of times the meetings don't happen in person anymore. They happen, virtually. So the buyer might be running late. Ask up front, do we still have our 30 minutes? Great. Thank you very much. Or he or she may say, I only have 20. So then you'll know that you're going to have to cut back on your presentation. And that's why that upfront, here's the 4 or 5 things we're going to talk about today, is so critical. Bruce?
Yeah, and Tracy makes an excellent point there. So if you double check the time allotment with your buyer, because remember, for you, this meeting is a huge, huge deal. For the buyer, it's meeting number 7.
Right.
Okay, so somewhere along the line, if they're behind or if their manager has called an urgent meeting for later in the day that wasn't on the books, they may clip 10 minutes. So know going in, if you get clipped, what you can leave out. And as we've discussed, if your meeting gets truncated and clipped a little bit, while you're disappointed, it's not always terrible because it opens the door for some follow-up. Because you could say, if Tracy's the buyer and he says, Bruce, we got to cut 10 minutes out of this. I was like, I got you. I'll get you there. Cover everything you need to do. But then at the end say, hey, listen, I'm going to send you a couple of other things since our meeting got cut short, just so you know exactly where we stand. Boy, that's hard to say no. Don't do that. Okay. So
Right.
I think that's good. The other thing to cover in your content of your deck is if your retailer told you last year what the metrics are for success and how the paper will be graded, make sure you're covering those.
Yes.
So if it's units per store per week, margin, an on-time shipping schedule, just list like your 6th grade report card looked. Goal, actual, goal, actual, and just address them and say, hey, we had a really good year, or we had a pretty good year. We fell down short here, but here's the 4 things we're doing to fix that. Now, if you're working at a retailer with a sales agent or broker that knows that account cold, they should really be all over these things for you. And they'll be telling you, it's like, hey, line reviews in 6 weeks. We're a little shy on our scorecard. So we should be tightening everything up every day anyway. But boy, if we could tighten it up in these last 6 weeks before we walk in, that would be extraordinarily helpful. So Tracy, talk a little bit more about what kinds of things should be in your category review, not just your brand review, but your category review.
Right. So again, talk about trends, if that's, different forms or maybe new products that are coming out. A lot of talk these days about like GLP-1. So make sure that you're really on top of not only your brand, but also what's going on, in the category. And again, getting back to that, tell the buyer something that they don't know. Make sure that you're being helpful to, the buyer. They also want to go ahead.
No, finish up. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So the other thing here is this is when, as Tracy said, you can talk about your innovation. And if the buyer starts pressing you on competitors, just stick to the facts.
Right.
As tempting as it might be to throw shade at a competitor, it's a bad look. Right. Okay, so don't say we're 60 times better. I mean, if you have facts that say we're preferred 8-1 over XYZ brand and you could substantiate it, that's good. But don't say, you know, juvenile things like they're terrible and we're great. Great. Sixth grade recess is already over. So let's not do things like that. That's crazy. It also makes you look bad, right?
Mhm.
They don't want to hear that. They want to deal in facts. So the other thing to make sure you include in your line review is your demand plan or your marketing plan. You want to tell people how you are going to drive this business for them. How are people going to learn? What is the way you're doing this? And we had an episode with Adam Brown from Circle Media, and he had a really interesting thing. You can't just go in and talk about social media, like how many followers you have and likes and this. It's like his whole point was if you're doing that, how is social media putting pressure against the retailers where you have distribution to drive sales? Your buyer doesn't care that the influencer you use had a puppy and got, 45,000 thumbs up. No one cares. You're not selling puppies in most cases. Maybe there's a few people that do. But, how are you helping them drive sales? All right. So Trace, we're coming down toward the stretch. Stylistically,
Mhm.
what do you need to do to have this meeting go as well as possible?
Yeah. So again, allows enough time for, plenty of questions. Again, make it a dialogue. Make sure that if you have your broker in there, that he's also prepared. So again, we want to don't wing it. Make sure you're totally prepared and practice, practice, practice. And again, like we said, you may only get 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And if you don't know your facts and figures cold, you're going to be caught really off guard. One thing I also wanted to talk about the data that has come up recently in one of my category review meetings. And that is if you have competitive data with, as Bruce said, with another brand, or maybe it's with another retailer. So what you'll want to do is if let's say that the retailer you're meeting with is outperforming sales wise on a unit per store per unit per store basis, you want to show that like, hey, Mr. Buyer, you're doing a lot better. I would recommend that you mask that data. I've met buyers before who are kind of offended that you're sharing another retailer's data because they're thinking in their mind, okay, then is Tracy sharing my data with them? So I would recommend if it's, another retailer, you just say account A or account W or whatever it is, and show that data so that they don't think that, oh gosh, well, if Tracy's sharing their data with me, I'm going to go ahead and he's going to go ahead and share my data with somebody else. So that was just another key point.
Yeah, before we get into the keys of the follow-up, Tracy, a couple of things there. Uh, I'm unaware of people that do this often, but there's still a few. Don't go into this meeting with no data. I mean, you'll know what your shipments are, and I know that syndicated data can be expensive, whether you buy it from the retailer or if you go to one of the third-party sources. If you want to be taken seriously, at least a couple of times a year, you've got to get a snapshot of what's going on in the market, not only so you understand your competitors, but so you truly understand your performance and you can speak to it with some level of specificity. Um,
Right.
so Tracy, we always talk about follow up. So what is the way when you close this meeting and you've had your discussion and you've taken copious notes, how do you successfully wrap this meeting up? What should the questions be around specifics and always our follow up?
Right. So again, first thing, as we talk about also in other episodes, make sure that you follow up in writing with the buyer, include your sales agent as well, at least within 24 hours, I would say. That's what I would recommend. And so these are the things you really want to, you want to confirm. Mr. Buyer, are you still on track to make a decision by XYZ date if you know that date? Or ask the buyer, Mr. Buyer, when will you be making a decision so then I can make sure that I follow up? The second thing is, when then will be your first order? Because as we've said on the show many times, the buyer hates two things: a brand that doesn't sell and a brand that doesn't ship. And if you're talking to a big retailer, you're going to want to make sure you have plenty of time to build that inventory. So make sure as you walk away, when are you making a decision? When is the first ship date? And then the third critical piece is, when is the planogram? When is the planogram going to be set at retail so that I know when that first order is going to be and when I can expect the product to be on the shelf? Because that's, as we've also talked about, that's when the clock starts ticking. As soon as that your brand hits that shelf, remember, it's not about sell in, it's about sell through. You're also going to want to make sure, as we talk about a lot too, about your demand plan. You don't want to start your demand plan before the product's on the shelf. That is another key point here too, Bruce, is continue that dialogue after your meeting with your buyer. As soon as you get a decision, yep, we're going to put you in, and here are the dates. Continue to follow up with that buyer. Hey, are you still on track? Maybe something happened and they're delayed. You don't want to turn on your consumer demand plan before product is on the shelf, because then the consumer has no way to buy the product and you're wasting your marketing dollars. Bruce?
Yeah, a couple other little things that I would just add here. When your line review meeting is over, whether it's live or virtual, if you're on there with one or two other team members, immediately get together and capture what you heard. Make sure you all heard the same thing. You know the questions you have to answer. You know the things that might be fuzzy in your mind that you want to follow up on. If in your line review you had any asks of the buyer, like, hey, we had a really good year. Could we potentially add 200 more stores on these two SKUs? Don't just go through your data and it's all positive and you hope they might think about expanding distribution. Ask for it. The other thing to be careful on, and we've had a couple of guests talk about this, if your brand is performing and your buyer is on board that it is performing, be careful adding too many more SKUs and/or doors. Remember, if it's units or dollars per store per week, if you add a bunch of stores that aren't in your geographic region, if you're a brand that's strong in the Southwest, don't add a bunch of New England stores.
Right.
If there's no business up there, because your sales won't go up that much, but your number of store doors, your denominator goes up a lot. So you might be thrilled with your initial order, but if it's not turning, you're going to spend a lot of time worrying. Gosh, and as Tracy always said, and we stress this all the time, follow up quickly, professionally, and accurately. You've done a lot of work to get into this retailer. Hopefully, you've had at least more success than failure, and you're ready to at least give it another run back, or a run back with some tightened up marketing, because you measured real carefully what worked and what didn't, and you made some changes, and you might be bringing in a new SKU, or you have some new innovation to show them. But you got to follow up on those things, because another thing, when Tracy's talking about when is the first order, first day to DCs, planogram dropping, that will affect your scheduling with your contract manufacturer if you don't own your own manufacturing facility. And as Tracy already said, retailers don't like brands that don't sell. They don't like brands that don't ship. And they really don't like brands that don't know how to make their own product. So you just got to be careful there. Trace, anything else to add?
Yeah, I just want to add, so coming out of the meeting, two things I want to emphasize, because I've been doing some review meetings lately, is if there's a follow-up and the buyer says, okay, I need this, and this form filled out, and I need it by next Friday, make sure you hit that deadline. Get it in early if you need to, but make sure that you follow up. And the other thing is, don't be needy or be too much of a pest. For example, if the buyer says, I'm going to be making a decision by the end of October, and now it's the 6th of October, and you're emailing him every day or every other day, hey, have you made a decision yet? You're going to really make yourself look bad. So if he says, I'll make a decision on the 26th of October, follow up on the October 26th. Hey, I remember from our meeting, I have my meeting notes here. It says you were going to make a decision. Have you made, a decision yet? I'd really like to know so that we can start moving forward. So again, follow-up is good. Too much follow-up can be bad and backfire on you. And make sure that whatever that follow-up is from that meeting, that you deliver on whatever that buyer asked you to do.
Yeah, and one other point here, as Tracy's talking about, little things like, can you get set up in the portal? Can you get set up with the promotion plan? So let's say this is going to be year 2 in XYZ retailer and they've made some changes to their portal, or you really struggled last year getting set up initially and they kind of cut you a break. You can't be a basket case every year, or you'll drive the buying team crazy. And during our interviews with a dozen of the largest retailers in the country, we had more than a couple of them say, you'd be surprised how many brands we've picked up over the years that never made it to the shelf because they had no idea how to get set up. So if you think you're going to struggle, you probably will. So you should give strong consideration to working with a broker or sales agent that knows that account cold, because you don't want to drop the ball early in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One more follow-up thing that came up again in a couple of meetings I've had that you want to make sure that you're discussing, and that is the distribution method. How is the retailer going to get your product? So there's a couple options. Ship them direct, use a distributor, or use a consolidator of some kind. So make sure when you leave that meeting, and this is really for a category review where you're not in distribution yet, ask the retailer, what is your preferred method? Again, the retailer gets to choose how they get the product. And in some cases, like a major retailer like a Whole Foods or also a Sprouts, as an example, they have specific contracts with UNFI and KeHE, and that's really the only method that they're going to use. You need to make sure you understand that, and don't go into your meeting and go, well, I'd like to go ahead and ship, drop ship to every single one of your stores. No, that's not an option. So understand, one, how the customer retailer wants to get the product, but make sure you ask that to the buyer. How are we going to get that product to you? Because you may not be set up in that distributor, and you're going to need to do that as well as get set up at the retailer. So just something else to think about.
Yeah, these are all good points, and this is a really important meeting. And even if you've been doing them for 20 years, if you still got to be on the ball, because a lot of things can, they can go wrong if you send the signal that you're not tight, you don't have your facts straight, you don't understand what's important to that retailer. If you had a few problems and you tried to slow roll it and not really discuss them, those things won't go well. So be upfront, talk about driving the category. And if you had a good year, how are you going to make it better? Because these buyers, if they get on an emerging brand early and it's rolling, they'll take a little ownership in that. They'll be psyched that they rolled the dice with you and it's working out. So kudos to you, and take advantage of that. Tracy, if you don't have anything else, I think we're ready for the world famous Big Finish.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed it. I hope you get a lot out of this. We wish you the best of luck in your line or category review as that starts to come up. And please continue to follow us on our LinkedIn page, Spotify, Apple, and also our website, which is www.road2retail. And we post every Tuesday. And thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, and if you have questions, submit them on the website. We'd love to try to help you out. Good luck out there, folks.
Thanks.